Hey everyone, welcome to episode 83 of the Stelios podcast. I'm your host Stelios, and this episode is all about potatoes. A little note about the last episode. I got quite a few messages from people saying that they really enjoyed that I spoke less and the ladies spoke more. I think that's really unfair, and I blame Leslie Graves for being the ringleader, and because of that I have a longer introduction for you all. I do joke though, there is a longer introduction, but I joke a little bit. You might remember Stuart Mitchell, who runs Mitchell's Potatoes with his brothers Angus and David. The Mitchell family have been in the potato business since 1883, which is a stunning 138 years or so. If you haven't heard our first episode with Stuart Mitchell, then jump back to episode 33. In this episode, we talk a lot about the history of Mitchell's Potatoes. For those that don't know, me and Stuart have known each other quite a long time, so you might be confused if you hear him referring to me as Steve. It's a bit of a story, but I don't mind, I've actually been called worse. If you want to get in touch with Mitchell's Potatoes or learn more about their setup, then visit mitchells-potatoes.co.uk. Our other guest on today's episode is Richard Lee of PJ Lee and Sons. They've been around for about 45 years, which is pretty amazing given how much of a significant grower they are, especially for the fish and chip industry. They've been in the business for about 45 years. The company consists of 3 generations, Peter Lee being the founder, with his sons Trevor and Richard, and Andrew and Christopher Lee, the 3rd generation, 2 managers, 1 estate manager, and 29 full-time staff, and up to 115 seasonal staff, so quite a big operation. The farm has expanded over the years, growing from a handful of acres to about 10,000 acres, give or take. So yeah, pretty big concern there. So to find out more about PJ Lee & Sons, visit pjleeandsons.com. I really enjoyed recording this podcast. It was a bit of a mess of a morning getting there. However, I must have hit every single roadblock on the way there. Should have been there at 10, got there at 11. I find you always have to be careful driving through the fens. The roads are a bit higher and a bit higher than the fields, and the wind can take you, and I don't really fancy ending up in a potato field. I've been in the fish and chip industry for some time, but in this episode I think I've learned a lot about potatoes that I just didn't know before. Between the wealth of expertise between Stuart and Richard, there was a lot of information to take in. There were some striking figures to consider in this episode. Last year, because of COVID, PJ Lee & Sons made a £2.5 million loss. That's just potatoes that they either had to get rid of or sell mega cheaply because they probably got mugged off by supermarkets and so on. The farmer, especially in this instance, PJ Lee, they outlay about £6 million before they've even sold a potato. And it just mind boggles. It's such a big amount of money. And one thing that we spoke about a lot, and you'll get it out of the episode, is when you open a bag of potatoes, do you smell spearmint? And this is because of now they can't use CIPC, which was used to stop potatoes from sprouting. So it's interesting that if you do notice that, just let us know, because I've not been told about it yet. So what is the best potato? Does it exist? Could gene editing be the future of potatoes? Like me, you may have got confused and thought it meant genetically modified, but from what I understand after listening to these guys talk today, is that gene editing would allow for less agrochemical usage, so that would make way for not only a better potato, but a better environment. Keep your eyes out also for a new potato variety, Babylon. If you can get your hands on them, let us know your thoughts. A few updates worth noting. On the 3rd of March at 12:30, Chancellor Rishi Sunak will tell us all about the budget. It's really important that we all sort of tune in and listen to that, because it'll be interesting to see what jab they give the economy to give it a boost to recover. We truly believe that hospitality is a really important sector to aid the recovery of the economy, but also the recovery of people's mental health. Whatever you say, we're social beings and we need to get out and eat and have fun and just do nice things. That said, we really need to see the government keep VAT at 5% or at least 10%. VAT at 20% is just outdated and absolutely egregious. It's not fair, and now is the time to send a letter or an email to your local MP. If the hospitality industry does get an extension, then that gives the industry bodies time to mobilise a plan for long-term change of the VAT system. The last few weeks have been pretty busy with the Serra's deep fry cleaner sales. We did run out, so we've had to ramp up production, so we're really sorry to some people who got their orders late. We did sort of had to anticipate it a little while ago. We then ramped up the production, but there was just a bit of a lag. I guess it was a quiet month in January, so many took the opportunity to do a bit of cleaning. It is amazing to see all the photos from all the customers. There is a real sense of pride from seeing how clean you can get those pans after a good boil out. What is really interesting is seeing customers dilute the deep fry cleaner in warm water and use it with a microfiber or super absorbent cloth to wipe down the range at the end of the night or shift. It does cut through the oil and fat very efficiently. A little note about the online store. We do aim to dispatch on the same day for delivery next day, but COVID is messing up schedules big time. We're also seeing an increase in online orders, so we've took on another courier to run some tests and see which is better. I guess what I'm saying is try not to leave your ordering to the wire. If you can order in advance, then it just gives you less margin for error if the couriers are on the slow side. Anyway, enough of me. I just wanted to cover some bases before this episode. I hope you enjoy episode 83 with Stuart Mitchell and Richard Lee. Richard, Stuart, welcome to the Sarah's podcast.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for arranging this, Stuart.
No problem.
It's really weird actually. I was thinking on my way here this morning that it took me ages to get you on the first episode with, first podcast, and now I can't get you off.
No, I love it. Yeah.
This is your third time. He's found his radio voice.
You're famous still.
Don't know about that.
So, for those that don't know who didn't read the intro, we've got Stuart Mitchell of Mitchell Potatoes and Richard Lee of PJ Lee Potatoes Farms. What is it?
PJ Lee and Sons.
PJ Lee and Sons. Don't forget about them, do we?
Yes.
Better known as High Flyer Farms.
Yes,
in the
better known
industry.
as High Flyer Farms. And it took me absolutely ages to get here today. I don't know what was going on with the roads. Did you have any traffic?
No, I whizzed through actually.
That's just me then.
No snow in the Midlands.
No, there was a few flakes, but I had a good run.
I told you I should have just come with you, but with everything being COVID secure, I just couldn't do it. But I ended up doing the whole round. I had to go through Chatteris and everything.
It was more peaceful travelling on my own, Steve.
Thanks. And for the listeners, Stuart always calls me by Steve, so just to remind them all that.
Sorry,
No,
Stelios.
Yeah, you don't have to try, just carry on as you are. Before we get into the introductions, I think one thing I did notice this morning that a lot of fields in the fens were covered with ice and snow. What I'd like to jump into, just very quickly before we get into sort of an introduction, like what sort of problems does that pose for you guys as farmers?
Well, currently we're seriously wet in this part of the world. We're just below sea level. So what happens in the fens, you have internal drainage boards that control the water level. So the IDBs have been busy pumping 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Just pumping the water out.
Yeah, to pump the water out from the drains into the rivers. So, of course, land is at saturation point. So naturally you'll see some ponding because it takes time for it to percolate through into the underdrains to then be pumped out. So it's actually the wettest January we've had for hundreds of years, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as well as December was wet too.
Was wet, yeah.
It doesn't feel like it though. Like looking back, we've all been locked in the house for a while, but it doesn't feel like it's been wet. Like
Well, I don't know. I live in the countryside, and it feels. Yeah,
does it?
Yes.
The brook at the bottom, the river at the bottom of my field floods, and it's flooded about 4 or 5 times this winter, which is not.
Yes, that's right.
Which is not normal. So
there is a lot of water then.
Yeah.
And again, I think most people are just going to listen to this, and I know they're already sceptics. So they're saying this is just a way for the farmer to put the price up. And I said to Stuart, I wanted to do this.
Well, it's true. I joke.
Yeah, but I did say to Stuart that I'd love to get someone who actually does this for a living, because I think there is that sceptical side of the industry that just thinks maybe not so much food service, but fish and chips, because they really need the potato. It's not like food industry could do something else. I think there is that sceptical thought that the farmer's always trying to do us over, and if the farmer's not trying to do us over, it's the merchants that's trying to do us over.
So when you say do us over, you're talking about...
I always take the collective argument of the industry. Yes, I do, because I see myself as that sort of part of the industry, if that makes sense. I've still got my friar's head on as such, but I've always sort of defended that argument and said, well, it's the market. It flow and ebbs, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's purely demand and supply. I mean, right now, the only person probably being done over is the farmer.
Yeah.
So it's...
Do you feel sorry for him when you say that?
I don't feel sorry for Richard, but I do feel sorry for a few of them. But look, some years the grower wins more so than the supplier, more so than the fish and chip shop, if that's how you see it. But they need to, I guess they have to make money. They've got to reinvest.
Yeah.
I'm not going to overly defend the grower, but
you have a business relationship.
If you look at the cost of potatoes as for a fish and chip shop, they are the multiple in terms of your basic product turned into the end product. The multiples is incredible, isn't it? So,
the profit margin.
Yeah, it is.
I get that.
It's hundreds of % increase in the value of the raw material up to the end product. Having said that, obviously there's a lot of costs involved in there.
I think, I suppose, but they're getting the benefits of the processing. So they're breaking down that bag, they're peeling it, they're chipping it, and that's So,
don't get me wrong, it's hard work.
No. What I'm doing is just trying to break down the process. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that that's what they get. Just like, for example, I can go buy a potato from a supermarket for not a lot of money and make crisps myself, or I can go buy some Walker's crisps. And there's no doubt I could probably do a decent job, I reckon. I'm a bit of a chef, as you know. I could do a decent job myself and have loads more for the cost of one potato, peeling, processing.
But that's going to take an hour of
time.
Your day.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference is I can just go to the same supermarket and buy a packet of crisps or one of those family bags and eat the lot. So I think that, there's no... I've spoken to you at great length, about, the fish and chip industry as such and pricing, and you've never been derogatory about it. You've just said, look, we've all got to make a margin here. And
that's I think that's the point, isn't it? Everyone's in it to make money, make a living, and I think it works. But it ebbs and flows. Like say, some years the farmer's better off, and other years the fish and chip shop's going to make more margin.
I don't think we need to do a full-on introduction for you, Stuart. I think most people know that you are, a prominent potato merchant of the Midlands.
Thank you.
Don't forget his brothers as well.
No, I can't.
Mention the brothers too.
Something I've always aspired to.
No, but I think it's one of those, isn't it? Like with, I think a lot of people might see Mitchell's as the big player. And I know you don't like those words, but I think it's a fair observation for our industry, because you are probably one of the largest. I always defend that and say, well, they wouldn't be big if they didn't do a good job, because it's easy to say the big one's crap about anything. It could be anything, but I don't think that's true, because if the big one was crap, nobody would buy off them. You've got to be good. You've got to be consistent, and I think you.
Thanks, Steve.
It's just. I'm not trying to blow smoke up his ass.
I'm not going to say anything.
No, because I know he hates the fact that when we talk about it, he hates being called like the largest, and I think and I just wanted to sort of finish that point, because a lot of people always say to me after, why don't you point that out, because they are quite big, and I think I just wanted to say it in a respectful way that there's nothing wrong with being big,
How many tons would you do in an average week?
Well, right now, not a lot, but I think if you looked at it through the season, it would probably average around 1,000 tons a week.
Yes,
but this season's not going to be that.
Yeah, so they are very large traders in what they do.
But we work hard at it. We work hard at the consistency. We work hard on on our distribution, making sure deliveries turn up on time. As you know, we do loads of fixed pricing as well, which generally works. Look, we've got plenty of competition.
Oh, I know, definitely, Absolutely. 100%. There's no doubt about that. Everyone's got someone nipping at the heels, and whether they're bigger or smaller, and there's always someone out there looking, aren't there?
There's always someone giving you a headache.
Yeah.
But that's business,
well, that's
isn't
good
it?
It's good for you. Yeah,
yes.
Actually, it is.
Competition keeps you on your toes. Without a doubt.
Keep telling myself that, Richard.
Yeah. So Richard, do you feel like you, in a way, I don't know, because farmers all sort of band together sometimes. That's the image non-farmers see. So do you feel like you've got competition? Because
oh yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I always find, like, because I don't know, you always have this, like, this wholesome image of a farmer, don't you? Like, and it's like, you know, we all help each other, we'll lend each other machinery and so on. And I bet that probably still happens, but...
Well, it does on some farms, but the larger producers of chipping potatoes are all very much independent.
Yeah.
And I assure you, you could sit round a table and agree at a meeting, and I would imagine after the second sale, they'll have broken that agreement because they're so independent.
Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, I can see where people would perceive that they're like a cartel, but I assure you they're not.
Yeah,
they're very independent people.
Because I think, especially from a fish and chip point of view, I don't want to throw food service under the bus here because they don't really look at potatoes as a very important commodity like a fish and chip shop would. But I think they do treat farmers as a whole big conglomerate group that are all sort of pushing the buttons and saying, yeah, we're not happy with this, let's just bump the prices up.
No, it's not like that. But I think a farmer will know when he has a lot of merchants contacting him, asking for potatoes. He's going to know there's obviously demand out there.
Okay, and he's also for the mood.
And he's also going to have 10,000 tons worth of storage. And if his shed is full with 10,000 tons, he'll probably think, okay, I'm probably going to have to sell a little bit less this year because I need to keep movement. But if I've only got 7,000 tons in there, I want more money.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, the market's going to be stronger and I'm in business. And two, my costs are going to be higher per ton.
Yeah, because you didn't fill the shed.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you're trading chipping potatoes, you follow the market all the time. And on a year like this, you could move your price up in increments of £5 a tonne, which is how much a bag? I don't know, 10 pence, is it something?
Yeah, 12.5 pence a bag.
12.5 pence. Now, in a year of short supply, when the farmer has the confidence, you could move it up £20 and £40 a tonne.
Yeah, 50p to £1 a bag. Yeah.
Yes, so probably when the fish and chip shop owner then sees Mitchell Brothers draw up and tell them that they're up £2 a bag, they would think Mitchell's are trying to profiteer, but it's always down to the farmer at the end of the day.
No, yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, there's running battles, between us and Richard on what.
Oh yes,
what
we have a lot of banter going on.
A lot of negotiations.
Yeah, and a lot of people, again, it just reverts back to this whole, well, they'll almost be mates, and then and I get where this feeling of sentiment comes from, but it's not like you're saying. It's just that you set the price, he argues with you about it, and then says, no, we ain't going to do that. And then you find a middle ground, and then...
Well, if Richard, say, for example, Richard wants to sell something to us at £5 a bag, but we've found perhaps a smaller farmer who's willing to sell us what we perceive the same quality level at £4.50, then we're probably going to buy a few from the smaller farmer to encourage Richard to come back in price. But Richard's quite a strong seller, so he'll probably just sit there and wait for me to
yes, well, our strength would be
Quality.
Continuity of supply.
Yeah.
So we would start supplying the chipping market from October and go through till June. Last year it's through to July because our season seems to be extending, to be fair, rather than going on to lower dry matter new crop. They tend to keep on the older varieties if the quality's there. So it's all a matter about negotiation.
Yeah.
To be fair, but you have to supply the quality because us farmers can't expect top value if the quality's not there.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about PJ Lee and Sons. How did it start?
Yes. Okay. Well, so I'm Richard Lee, one of the partners at PJ Lee and Sons. Just start with me. I left school at 15, and just to put it into perspective, we was growing then. Let's talk about bags really, so you can understand. We was doing about 24,000 bags then. Then in my time, we peaked in 2019, and we was supplying 2,240,000 bags to the trade. Then COVID hit, and we decided to cut back because we didn't know where the market was going for this year. So we cut back 600 acres. So this year we produced 34,000 tonne, which equates to 1,360,000. So we cut back, and we'll talk another time a bit later about what we're doing next year. So PJ Lee and Sons, we started from small beginnings, and then we registered our brand, our High Flyer brand, and of course that once we gave the continuity and they could see that we was given the quality, we was able to get a premium within the market, and we've gone down the route of frying varieties always. Some of our potatoes might go to the likes of McCain's or Lamb Weston, which are big, large processors. But of course, what happens? The fish and chip shop trade demands zero sugar, because that's where you get your fry colour from. You don't want no sugar in your potatoes. So if we get some potatoes that carry some sugar, we would look to market them to the processors, because Mitchell Brothers would look to have a zero sugar content, where in the processing industry they can take from 0 to 3 sugar. But you wouldn't be able to sell a 2 or 3 sugar to your fish and chip shops.
I see.
Because so they'd just go like chocolate.
Yeah.
But the big processors, when the process they use, they're able to blanch them, aren't they, Stuart?
Yeah, they manipulate it,
Yeah, and therefore that's a different market.
I suppose they've got access to sort of chemicals and systems and machinery that we...
Because, so if you guys had the time, if you blanch potatoes, you could use a slightly inferior one, because it'll give you a more even colour when they're
takes
cooking.
the sugar out.
Yeah.
Because I know when back in the day when we just, you'd get the odd batch that had a bit too much sugar in them. We'd just fill up the barrel with hot water, leave it for a few minutes, and then drain it.
I still think people should do that. This is the mistake. It's what they should be doing right now with these cold conditions, because the water in the back of the premises is going to be near off freezing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shock value.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's what they should
stops
do.
it dead almost.
They just need to boil the kettle 2 or 3 times, pour it into the barrel, and then their fry colour will be better in these cold periods. We do advise people that way, but
I think it's still. A lot of people think that that you can use a chemical alternative, and I did some research on this because we've brought out a potato preparation. So I did all the research, and I found that the only difference between the normal one, let's say, and the newer version is that it just has a buffer in it, and it just moves starch a little bit faster. But that's it. It's just a chemical agitator, and I think my concern is that actually water still does it 10 times. Hot water still does it 10 times better. Yeah. And I think, like you say, it just shocks that potato from being cold, especially after processing. They've been in a coldish room, been for a cold water peeler, and a chipper that's being soaked with cold water as well. So,
I think for most of the year they're fine, but it's certainly when temperatures are dropping below zero at night and in low figures during the day.
Because what you must remember with a potato, if you distress it in any way or form, that will turn the starch into sugar. So that stress can come from the fish and chip shop. Even putting it in a rumbler would distress that potato, but that's used quite quickly. Yeah. That's if you chip them and expect them to be used late in a long time. So you chip them at the lunch time and then you go to the evening time, you'll see a difference in that fry. Yeah. And us farmers have to be very, very careful we don't distress that potato.
They're very sensitive.
Even when they're growing.
How do you build we're probably going to get into this later on, but over the years the potato technology, let's say, has got better.
Oh yes.
And customers' expectations at every level, whether it's a chip shop or the chip shop's customer, has gone up. They don't want blemishes, bruises. They don't want green bits. They don't want, not very nice chips. And I think the likes of McDonald's have probably pushed everyone forward in that respect, because you do really get a blemish-free fry from them. But I think that it's really difficult because the technology's moved forward, but yet everyone's expectations are moving forward at the same time, aren't they?
Yeah, that's so
it's like, so you don't actually win it, or you don't win, do you? Because it's like, if you remember potatoes from 40 years ago, maybe, it's probably a bit...
Well, we only had when I started, Maris Piper 20 years ago. really.
Yes,
the
that's
main
right.
season. And
Yes.
all these new varieties, like, I mean, Marquis the one that's brought everything on. Its
Well, I remember when Marquis was being spoken about initially. Like, I remember one of the agronomists came to our shop. I don't know if it was through you or what, but and I remember him talking. It was like he was talking about voodoo, a different potato. You know,
Yes,
like,
that's right.
Yeah, and he was just like, "What are you on about?" Like, and it's just like, and it was just the fact that it was new as well, or at least new crossbreed or whatever. And I think it just really, and now you've got so many different ones, and I think. How many varieties would you have at any one time?
Well, I don't think it's that. I mean, there are a lot of varieties, but we have a core of 10 different varieties, maybe 8 in the main season, and probably 6 in the new crop during the new crop, so July and August. And individual friars like certain varieties. Some people only want Agria, some people only want Maris Piper. Some people like Ramos, and it's just I think it's down to the individual, how he preps the potatoes, how he cooks them, what his frying range is like.
And I think skill level of the fryer comes into it.
Yeah.
Years ago, they would fry and they would play about with the temperature to get the fry correct.
Yeah.
But now, my advice would be if you're learning how to fry potatoes, you ought to be buying the variety Marquis.
Yeah.
Because the fry colour of that is very exceptional. So I think an unskilled fryer could still produce a very white fry from it.
I think one argument about the Marquis that many sort of bring up to me today is that they feel it's a drier chip. But,
Yes, true.
But that can be tweaked with frying.
I think if you buy the right quality Marquis, the dry matters are a lower level, and most fryers wouldn't spot that they are actually Marquis, because you're right. The perception is they're really dry, but I think that was in the early days, when the first 4 or 5 years when we were growing it, and things have adjusted since then. I mean, Richard and his team will be paying very close attention to the dry matter during the growing season.
Yeah, when we sell potatoes now, we sell them on their fry colour, their peel, their size, and their dry matter. So dry matter, that's essential that you understand as a trader what you're selling in terms of dry matter, because too low and you'll have a soggy chip, too dry, too high it'll be too dry and mealy. So as growers, we set our stall out to try and produce a 21.5 dry matter. So if you have a 23 dry matter Marquis, as a marketeer man, I might put that to the crisping companies because they like a higher dry matter. And the chip shop, you tend to do your 19.5 to 21.5.
Very narrow. It's a very narrow target, isn't it?
Oh yes, it is. Yes, yeah.
And if anything goes under or over, so under, what would you do if it's under? Who would you market it?
Well,
if it was under that.
When the crop is growing, you burn off your crop when it reaches the right dry matter.
Okay.
So we very rarely get under our 19.5 because we'd let the crop grow on and senesce more, mature more, and then we'd burn that off because we're testing dry matters 10 days before we think we might be burning off. Yeah. So we're monitoring all the time.
And so the dry matter increases after you burn them off, doesn't it?
Only marginally.
Only marginally.
Yeah, because you're killed the crop off. And as it's a dry matter, if you're having a wet time before you're ready to burn them off to kill them, the dry matter will go lower because that's taking in the water.
Right.
Okay. If it's very dry at the time of your burning off, you'll see the dry matters rising dramatically. So the timing is essential when you're burning the crop off for dry matter.
Wow. So much that goes into it, isn't there? It's that
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just a guy doing potatoes.
Yeah, we would have 3 teams of 2 with vans and forks picking samples up in the fields, coming back and then doing dry matter tests.
How many acres are you growing potatoes on here?
Yeah, so this year on the reduced acreage, we was 1,800 acres.
Okay.
But of course we'd cut back the 600 acres. Next year, I believe we'll stay the same because I'm unsure where we're going to be with the demand with COVID, because we are noticing the fact that the restaurants, hospitality have closed, and you don't realise until you've lost that trade what you had.
Yeah.
So, of course, if we was getting too many oversized potatoes for the chip shops, we'd be moving them to the catering outlets for Jenga chips and things like that. Well, that trade is no longer there. And also hospitality, that they would be using the poorer fries. So we're missing out on that.
Yeah.
But it's all profit profit related. Excuse me. We're all expected to be able to make a profit, and that's how it should be. And going forward, I think that will be the case. But just at the moment, the losses are falling hard on the farmer. So that will wane their interest in going forward, I believe.
So times like this, I take it, when I noticed from my sort of business in the first lockdown that all the sort of all the chip shops were closed initially, restaurants were closed and so on. So a lot of the sort of flour went towards retail. Did that sort of happen with potatoes? Going towards like your supermarkets and so on?
When COVID...
The initial lockdown.
Yes, that was March 22nd, wasn't it? I think that was the Monday.
Yeah. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, what we found, our trade stopped overnight and then slowly picked up. But previous COVID, we was set for a super year, and us farmers get those super years maybe 1 in 6. Okay, so we was trading at 290, 300, 310 pounds a tonne.
That's £10 plus a bag.
Okay.
COVID came in and stopped and then slowly built up. And we went back to £150 a tonne, 140, 150. And we did do some on open price to Ireland, because we export to Ireland, to the chip shops there, south and north. So we ended up probably averaging the rest of the season 140. Well, that relates to about 2.5 million loss of income.
Wow.
So that focuses your mind, trust me.
Yeah.
So we felt it prudent to cut back.
Yeah.
And now we find ourselves trading, we're between 140 and 160. So we are still losing money today. But I believe going forward, prices will increase, but not probably for another month, in my opinion. I think with vaccination, more footfall in the big cities, once that gets back, because probably Stuart can enlighten us on that. I assume the big cities are not maybe even open, are they, the chip shops?
No, the chip shops are open. I think we're probably 25% down, and this is because shops are not opening on Mondays. Mm-hmm. They're closing earlier.
Oh yes.
The fish and chip restaurants we supply aren't open, or they're just doing takeaways. So this is what's contributing towards it. But Richard's right. Well, in my opinion, is as soon as people start moving around more, they're going to see their friends. They're going to take away on the way home. They're going out for lunch. They'll go, or they're going down to the seaside, or whatever it may be. There's going to be loads of pent up demand. I think I read in the paper the other day, there's 100 savings in the UK have gone up by 125 billion since the start of lockdown.
Yes, I can imagine that.
In individuals' bank accounts.
And they don't want to spend that.
So although there's going to be job losses, isn't there? Well, there already is, and so there's. I still think there's going to be some pent up demand, and we're quite social creatures, aren't we? So you'd think that we're all going to at some point, and it might be. I think Richard's right. May and June this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we see prices at £8 to £10 a bag for the best quality.
Yeah, that's spot price.
If you want to buy something that's completely average and shouldn't really be going into the market, you'd probably still be able to buy it for £5. But we're in a range of sort of £5.75 to up to £7 for sort of best quality, and that's going to increase. But in my mind, and I could well be wrong, but by the time we hit next season, you're going to see the vaccine, you'd hope, has taken hold. Whether we can travel abroad or not, if we can travel abroad, okay, so we're going to lose some customers abroad, but that means people are going to be able to travel into the country. So you're going to have some of the sort of food service industry growing, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're going to have natural food service growth because people are going to want to go out to restaurants. I can't wait.
People
to go
going
out.
back to work and office
People,
work.
yeah, exactly, as well, yeah. And so, but that will be a gradual increase. But really, you'd think in my opinion, from May onwards, you're going to start to see increases in demand, which will lead to increases in value.
And obviously, if you've grown less, then that should be it'd be a sharper increase, I guess.
This is it. There'll be a lot of, this is my opinion, but there'll be a lot of spuds that don't make it into the fish and chip market this year, which were originally destined for it. They may not even make it anywhere. So I know a couple of growers not far from here who've got fields that they've just left in the ground because when we tested them in October, they just weren't good enough.
Wow.
And he just thought, well, I just can't be asked. I can't be so bothered.
That's fine.
Yeah, to take them out, to lift them, because I'm probably going to lose money whatever happens, and I'm refusing to take the values that are being offered to me, so I'm just going to leave them there.
Let them feed the ground, feed the soil.
Well, that's it, exactly. Or they'll be going to feeding cattle as well.
Oh, okay.
But I think the chip shop's worry is, and I'm obviously going to say this, but is leading into next season where supply is going to be reduced and demand is going to be increased, which leads to
high prices.
Exactly. And then, sorry.
But we do need higher prices at farm gate for the farmers to reinvest.
Yeah.
Because you'll find there'll be several farmers quit potato growing for next year. Yes, I do. I do.
No, I thought that.
I also think there'll be several farmers reduce their acreage. So if trade does come back to normal times,
near enough normal,
I think the prices will increase quite dramatically for next year.
I think.
But it's the big question, will we get another lockdown even though we are vaccinated? They're going to study it, aren't they?
I feel, to me, I hope, anyway, this is the last one. And the longer the government can hold on to the reins and keep us from going out, this one should hopefully lead to a gradual...
Yeah, I think if we see a
gradual move to freedom.
And I do think that we'll probably see a lot of staycations in the UK. And like you said, people coming over for holiday if they're allowed. But if Europe's behind us, I'm not trying to be political here, but if they're behind us on vaccinations, then I can't see people going to Europe on holiday. So I can see increased demand for definitely. You'll take chances. But I think in general though, it depends what sort of strict line the government takes. And I think, and with Brexit going on and, a bit of tit for tat, you could conceivably see how the government says, well, they ain't had vaccinations, you're not going over there. I think so. But I think that would be good for the economy. Staycations would be good for the economy. All of these would boost the British sort of spending, if that makes sense. And all those savings that you mentioned, hopefully they could be spent in the UK. I know this sounds very anti-travel and anti-Europe, but I just mean at least it would help the economy of the UK if some of that money could be spent over here. But I think if we look at Brexit for a moment, what sort of impact does that have on potatoes? Does seed come from the UK? Does it come from abroad? Or
here our seed, we source it from Holland, which is a large seed house there called Agrico, which would be one of the largest seed suppliers globally. So we go over to Holland November, December, visit the farms and source the seed. And that has been coming over the last fortnight, some before the December deadline, because they was unsure of tariffs and things like that. We also have seed come from Scotland, so we go to Scotland and also the Yorkshire Wolds and source seed. because we like to inspect it in the farmers' stores, because there's many different farmers out there, some very passionate about how they do things, and some, I hate to say it, rather lackadaisy. So you need to inspect your seed, or that's what we find. So seed's coming down now. A proportion of it goes into cold store. So we would hold that seed about 2.5 centigrade. So you only get growth in potatoes 4 centigrade above. So you store it at 2.5 to stop it from growing. And then we also have a proportion of the crop that goes into the chitting houses. So we'll hold it from 4 to 6. So it grows very slowly. So the chit then grows. And it has daylight or lights, artificial lights, so the chit goes green and strong. And what that will do, that will give us apical dominance, as we call it, which will give us 10 days more growth out of it. So we can plant it a little bit later in the season, but it will still have that 10-day gain. So it'll reach its maturity that much sooner at the end of the season. So we can lift it in drier conditions before the frost sets in. So we would be purchasing that seed before we even go to the farms to have a look. That'd be subject to our visit. Okay. So farmers have to be very forward thinking with potatoes.
You don't just think, I'm going to grow potatoes this year.
No.
I mean, we'll be agreeing contracts with growers for July 2022 at the moment. So you've got to look ahead.
I struggle to fix my diary a month in advance. I'd be no good at this business. But like, again, what when you're saying this, I just looked at Stuart and gave him a look, and it's almost like gone are the days of, well, or at least here anyway, but gone are the days of I'm just going to grow a few spuds on the side of my wheat. Like, yeah, well, it's down. This is a proper full-on.
Oh, yes, down to the capital investment, because we haven't spoke about putting big, large potato stores up, environmentally controlled, forced ventilation. Yeah, a farm of our scale. We recently put a new potato store up, was 3.5 million. We put reservoirs in for irrigation. We buy the very latest harvesters that treat the potatoes like eggs, because that's what we say, which they're all £600,000 a pop, and we've probably got 6 of them. So massive investment. So to grow an acre of potatoes, you're talking about £3,000 an acre to bring it to storage. So we would lay out probably 6 million before we even get a cheque from Stuart. So you can imagine how complex it is, and the need to get it right for our customer, for us to get that money back and show a profit.
It's real tight margins in a way, isn't it?
Yes.
I think you're laying out that sort of money and effort and time. You've got staff, you've got everything, and then it's like, so it's not as simple as farmers always win.
It's not like, so for a fish and chip shop, if they're paying £10 a bag, they're probably still going to make a profit at the end of the week.
Well, I'd like to think so. Everybody needs to make a profit, don't they?
But if they're £5 a bag, they're just going to make a larger profit.
Yeah.
But if they're £5 a bag to the fish and chip shop, the grower,
he's just losing money.
He's losing money. But we're not going to feel sorry for him too much, because there are years where he gets.
Yeah, it was only one of 6.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Well, they say, Stuart, you never see
£15 a bag, then he's really making some money. So don't forget that.
They say, Stuart, you never see a farmer on a bike. Well, I assure you, I've got a bike.
No. Yeah. You've also got a Range Rover, haven't you?
Oh yes, that's old.
I think all farmers have Range Rovers.
But I aspire, Stelios, to be like the Mitchell brothers and have a fast car in the garage, a Ferrari or a Porsche.
I drive an Audi. That's my wife's car.
Okay.
Yeah, Stuart's not like that. That's the bad brother. No, but I think there shouldn't be anything wrong with celebrating success or profit. I think it shouldn't have to be a dirty word. And also, I think, let's be honest here, Fish and chip shops don't have to lose for you guys to win, and you guys don't have to lose for them to win.
No, there's common ground
There
out there.
has to be common ground.
Yes, there is.
Like, you know,
Yes.
and I think, and that's what I've always said this, and I think this goes on to one of the things, and we're going to get onto it a bit earlier, but I'm going to really butcher this sort of thought process. But you know, if we could guarantee, for argument's sake, that what's a good price for potatoes today? 10. I mean, like for a good quality top bag.
I think really for the grower to £8 is probably where if I don't know, Richard may not agree, but they're all there at maybe £8.50 when Richard's involved. But at £8 as an average through the season,
Right.
or
So if we just said, let's just
the grower's going to make a profit, shop's going to make a profit.
Yeah.
I'll make a little bit in the middle.
Oh, I'm sure, just a little bit. Yeah. But if we just make a hypothetical number, £9 a bag. Yeah, let's start. Shop pays £9 a bag. Yeah, they're going to scream at this. Everyone's going to be like, "What's he on about? I want cheapest spuds, not dearest spuds." But then you could say, "Well, you're guaranteed Y from Stuart, and Stuart gets Z because he's in the middle." Yeah, well, I don't know what those margins are between you guys, but what I'm getting at is, if everyone could hedge that for 2-3 years, you know what your investment's going to be. You know how many potatoes roughly to expect post-COVID, pre-COVID. Does that ever work, or is there too much involved with the free market?
Well, you can see it yourself, can't you? When the boot's on the grower's foot, then I know about it, and then in turn the fish and chip shop knows about it because we have to pass those price increases.
Yeah.
But for example, right now, even though we're sort of coming to the end of this period, since April, May of last year, up until now, the boot's been on the fish and chip shop's foot, and so they've been winning. So if Richard and I are negotiating for the following year, I'm going to be harder than I would be if I was paying a lot more for my potatoes, which Richard will probably vouch for the fact I am being quite hard, trying to be hard.
Yeah.
You're always hard with me, Stuart.
But he's not having any.
I'm the suppressed farmer.
Yeah, but Richard's not having any of it. So it's. I don't think you might get commitment for 2 years, but not 3, because the growers don't know what their costs are going to be. I don't know what my costs are going to be.
Well, we have to understand and accept inflation.
Yeah.
Because there will be inflation. And what we haven't spoke about is what us farmers are having a job to come to terms with is the loss of CIPC sprout suppressant, which stops the potatoes growing in store. That's been banned, and now we're using other products. So the 2 other products we have offered to us are ethylene and spearmint oil. So we chose the latter, spearmint oil. So we're getting mixed results with it. So when we talk about values this year, you need to understand spearmint is not working as well as we expected. So we're unsure how well we can hold the quality through till June and July. So if what we're seeing is happening in all stores, on all farms, I think the costs or the values could, for the right quality, to go up quite high. Because I think, yes, there is a surplus of potatoes, but I think a lot of them won't find a home. I think we could see potatoes being dumped because of things not going right in stores. So what happens if you don't control those sprouts, the potatoes will go very soft. So when you put them in your rumblers, they'll bounce about like tennis balls, which you don't want. So consequently, it might be to have a more solid potato, you might have to sacrifice the fry colour to a certain extent, because if you lower your temperature in store, you'll affect your fry colour, but it'll be a more solid potato. But I don't know which way it will go.
So was CIPC that bad?
Well, it's all about parts per million, isn't it, Richard?
Yes,
Yeah.
That is, you're only allowed so many parts per million, or you were with CIPC, which we all did. But quite the reason why that's been banned European-wide, I'm unsure. But the ironic thing is there's a product called DMN that is used in Holland that is better than spearmint oil and not as good as CIPC. But the Dutch Belgium growers are allowed to use it, but we're not allowed to use it.
Why?
We wasn't when we was in the EU. I was a Brexiteer because I felt as though we could rewrite the rule book once we're out. And these are the sort of things where I thought we might benefit from. And I thought we might be able to use DMN. But even now we're out of the EU, we're not allowed to use DMN. So ethylene, I believe, sugars the potatoes a little. So the likes of McCain's would be okay with farmers using ethylene. But I think for the fish and chip shops, it's not right.
It's all spearmint, yeah.
Yeah, so spearmint. So you fish fryers listening are probably now beginning to smell spearmint, mint, when you undo the bag. Now, what you've got to say to yourselves there, on average, farmers may have done it twice now, 2 applications. And I think to keep potatoes till June, July, we might have to use up to 8 applications. Now, so then I'm thinking, how pungent will actually be when you undo that bag?
Then.
So I think you might be advised to have an extractor in your storeroom so that smell doesn't waft through to your counter.
Right, airwaves.
You really think it would be that strong?
I'm unsure.
I'm
unsure, Stuart.
The smell of fat frying probably beats anything, doesn't it?
True.
So
Well, if it's going to be that strong, does it carry through on the flavour?
No.
once
so
you peel
No
it-
taint.
Oh, okay. Peel it goes.
David, my brother, walked into our cold store where all the bags of potatoes are stored.
Yeah.
So they're in sacks. About 3 weeks ago, and he said, "Crikey, you can smell
It was
this."
minty.
Yes,
yeah.
you can.
Very minty, yeah.
Yes, you can.
But that was the first time we'd noticed it, and I imagine there'd been a lot of spuds gassed or
What's
Yeah.
the reason that you're not allowed to use the DPN, or was it?
Isn't that up for discussion still?
Yes, DMN is the
DMN.
product that's being used by our Dutch counterparts. They've just not accepted here as yet that we can use it. I think it will come.
Was it a protectionist thing before? Because why is it when we were in the EU we still weren't allowed to use it? Or was it just not approved?
Just our scientists wouldn't approve it,
Okay.
so we didn't get it. But there is a trial going on now, but the product is being allowed to be used in the crisping industry,
Okay.
not in our niche market of fish and
Well, I
chip
guess
shops.
if they can test it there first and make sure, because I suppose they're the guys with the money to test it. If they test it and it's okay, then
Well, the DMN is approved in these other countries. They're
yeah.
using it.
So you're just buying a product.
yeah.
If Stuart imports potatoes at any time, more than likely they will have been treated with the product DMN.
Okay. And how many times would you have had to treat potatoes with CIPC?
To take the potatoes through to June, 4 at most,
Oh, okay.
and the cost. When we was using CIPC last year, you would be paying 90 pence a tonne every application.
2p a bag.
So we're
I
now.
love how fast you are on the
He is. He's good with them figures,
Yeah, I know,
isn't he? You can imagine dealing with him each morning, can't you?
Honestly, it's just like it's like having like a calculator.
Yes. And the spearmint oil is £4.20 a tonne.
So
So-
it's dearer, smellier, and you need to use
5
it all.
times.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's why I keep on to Stuart and the likes to keep giving us this increment of £5 a tonne, at least monthly, just to cover for the cost of spearmint.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it's as good a product. Well, it's not as good.
No,
But going back to your question about taint on the taste in the potatoes, you must remember spearmint oil's been used a lot in the pre-packing world.
Oh, right.
So if you was to go to your big 6 supermarkets and buy a pack of potatoes, I would imagine most of them would have had a spearmint application.
Right. Okay.
So that's how we know it doesn't taint.
with what I don't see a lot of, I see it a little bit with wheat. You see organic wheat, but do we see organic potatoes? Is it a thing?
Well, I mentioned fish and chip shops being a niche market. Well, organic potatoes even more so. Yeah. But there is growers out there that do grow organic potatoes.
I guess it's a mass market carbohydrate. It's there to feed the masses, isn't it?
It must be quite difficult around here, sort of cross-pollination.
Yes, well, you'd be worried about the blight side of things.
Yeah, that's great,
yeah, because they wouldn't be able to use the same products as we use.
Yeah.
They'd have to have probably a copper dusting or something like they did hundreds of years ago.
If you had an adjacent field.
But yeah, that's right. And
That's
if you was in the same wind direction, which blows the blight spores across, you'd be very nervous of being near them. But they are out there.
It's interesting because that's all it takes. It just takes the wind to blow. Like we bought some cumin and we had to send it back because they traced back the wheat on it because there was a wheat farm, wheat growing a few fields away, and it blew over and they just touched or whatever, and they found like a little trace on it, trace element, so we couldn't say it was gluten free.
Right. Yeah.
And you just
Yes.
something
Well, I suppose you've got to be pretty careful with that, though, haven't you?
And that's all it was, and you just think, come on, like.
Yeah, there's tight rules and regulations with organic products.
Oh, definitely.
Excuse me.
And we do get people say to us sometimes, "Oh, can I have organic batter?" But the raisin agents aren't organic, so it'd be sort of pointless, really. It'd be a pointless exercise, really.
Yes,
pay that
sure.
extra volume as well for probably slightly more inconsistent product as well, to be honest. Because I think that the controls that are there for what we currently have are quite high. So one thing you touched on earlier as well is that essentially you guys are growing potatoes for the lowest common denominator when it comes to skill levels. You know, people might leave potatoes outside or in a cold room. They then chip them all at 7 o'clock in the morning and they last all day. And everyone's expecting them to be perfect. Would you say that people probably should chip less more often?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yes.
Yeah, twice a day.
So once in the morning, once in the afternoon, let's say.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think everyone's got a different process, haven't they? Some of them peel them and leave them whole, and
Yeah.
then they chip for lunchtime.
Do they still use the dry white?
Yes, yeah, very much so.
Yeah. I don't like that word. No, I'm only joking.
Steve.
Yeah.
That's competition, isn't it, Stelios?
No, it's only that. No, it's fun because
Someone has an
Well, we said that's good
alternative.
as competition, Stuart, didn't we?
I always love using my platform to promote my competitors. It's great. No, joking aside though, like, I think that there is the potato preparation, which is sodium metabisulfite. We don't make a secret out of that. Like, you know, we sell it at great value and they sell it at dearer. Like, they make more margin. They're probably like the farmers. Like, they make loads of margin, you know. But no, like, joking aside, like, I think that is really. I think some people have tried to bring out newer, you know, it's not toxic, but hazardous, let's say. And there's nothing that does the trick. Like, there's nothing. I think the weakest compound is that. Like, that is the weakest compound. You can go to stronger compounds, but good luck with that because you need ventilation and so on. But it does the trick, and it does blow off if you do it right. The minute it hits the oil, it blows off. But yeah, there is different ways. Like, some of my customers just peel the potatoes, potato prep, and then they'd let them dry, and then they'd chip them off as they need them, or they would do the whole process. Which is the best is left up for debate. One of my customers, he's got a very busy site, but he literally has a guy there all day, and they prep all day. So, you know, they they stop prepping at 1:30 for argument's sake, and then they start again at 3:30. And they're just constantly knocking out chips, and he says like that's the best chip you can get. And
no, you know, if you can get away without using potato prep, you are gonna have the best. Probably have the best product. You don't probably want to hear that.
No, I don't think you would. I don't think no, because potatoes they spoil fast. Remember back in the day, I remember.
Actually, I'm just getting pictures of the backs of fish and chip shops with tubs full of sort of spoiling chips.
You know, a friend of mine, he doesn't use it at all, but his peeler is purple. No, not his peeler, sorry, his chipper, because where the potatoes touch and the starch starts to go, it goes a bit purpley because it's bruising. Yeah. So, you know, if you don't treat potatoes with something, you're going to have a problem. I'm not trying to sell my product here. I didn't invent it. I've just joined the party.
No,
so,
fine. You're
but
right.
no, I think
99%.
But if I go back to the days when a friend of mine, James Morley, did potatoes, I remember they needed treating, and I said to him back then, like, can you ever stop treating them? And he goes, only if you blanch them, like, and we don't do the blanching.
Do you know why? And so I wanted to ask Richard this. Why is a potato grown in Shropshire? Why does it not fry through the main season, where potatoes grown in Cambridgeshire, specifically in Lincolnshire, have better fry colours?
Well, I always view it that Shropshire potatoes tend to be grown in a minerally soil.
Sandy sort of,
With sandy small particles of stone, right? And I always believe that gets into the eye of the potato, and then as that potato ages, that somehow affects it. And you never seem to get a good quality potato, no disrespect to the Shropshire farmers, from in Shropshire late in the season.
No.
Early the season,
Great.
no problem. It's the same with the variety Maris Piper. Although we just poo-pooed Maris Piper as a frying potato, when it's first lifted out of the land, there's nothing beat a Maris Piper.
No, fry colour.
The fry colour,
texture, everything.
yeah, and the taste. But soon as you put it into store and start sprout controlling with your spearmint oils, you lose the fry. And then with the lack of the skill of the fryer, Piper seems to be losing its number one spot where it had years ago to the likes of Marquise. But also going back to your treatment of your chipped potatoes, we used to grow a variety called Fianna.
Yeah.
And they was a perfect fry, just like Marquise, but they would get enzyme greying.
Yeah.
And if they didn't put in your products, Stelios, they would go grey and wouldn't hold up in the hot box.
Yeah.
Yeah, very dry as well. And
They would dry.
It's a parent of Marquis, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
So it's like the
probably
precursor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all these things you have to be aware and monitor. And it's like now, I find you need to supply the trade with the best fry quality, because as the fish and chip shops are slow, and once they take them out of the fryer and then put them in the hot box, poorer quality will change colour and won't be nice at all.
Yeah.
But if you have the best quality on your slow trade, they'll keep in the hot box.
Yeah, it's interesting because sodium metabisulfate does get a bad rap, but what people don't get is that the minute it hits the oil at a decent temperature, it blows off. And you're looking at me, he doesn't believe it, does he? But if you think, like, you pick up a cordial drink, whether it's Robinson's or whatever, what's in it? Sodium metabisulfite, and you're ingesting it, you're drinking it. I do think, so that's one argument I would say. But the other is, when it comes to potatoes as well, is that there is a lot of traders out there that are more than happy to go buy the £4 bag of spuds that take double the amount of work. They're left with a lot.
I think they're just thinking purely of price, and they probably they've got staff who are going to be there in the shop, and so they take a little bit longer to prep the spuds. I mean, I don't know what the thought process is, but I think the trend is definitely leaning towards shops buying more expensive potatoes and going for the best product.
The specialist product.
The specialist product. Everything, all potatoes that reach the fish and chip shops have been grown with the fish and chip shop in mind. They are chipping varieties.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and they are grown. So the growers that grow for us in Warwickshire, for example, they grow it with us in mind, and that's we're the primary customer. And if it doesn't reach the spec that it needs to, then they go into processing like McCain's and Lamb Weston, or possibly crisping, or there's even worse things they can go for, but we'll leave that. But yeah, it's all specialist. It's just some fields are going to be good and some fields aren't going to be so good.
So does the perfect potato exist yet? Are we moving to that direction?
I think Marquise is, I don't know if people hate it, but anyway, Marquise, Agria, Ramos. I think you've got the perfect potato for the right time of year.
Do they hate it because they've had a bad version of that?
Yeah, because you heard how much time they spend in trying to make sure the dry matter's correct. Some growers might not pay attention to dry matters whatsoever, but you might have a Marquis that looks absolutely beautiful when it's fried, but the chances are the better it looks, the higher the dry matter's going to be.
Yeah.
And so, so there's what happens is it's in a quiet shop and it's sitting there in the hot box for 20 minutes, and then it becomes it dries out because there's no moisture inside it. And Marquise doesn't absorb as much oil as other varieties do, and that's probably why it has got a slightly drier texture. But right, for us, I know Richard doesn't grow Ramos at the moment, but for us, Ramos October through to February, March, we think that's the best option. Then later on in the season, we think Marquis is the best option. In the summer, we think Arcade's the best option. But that's on one particular season. On another season, Sagita might be better.
So this is where I was talking.
It's all weather conditions.
Because before you rang me today to see where I was actually talking about you, and this is one of the things I was saying to people is that they've got the variety. You know, if you're with someone like Mitchell's potatoes, you've got something to jump onto if something ain't so good, and you know what's good at what part of the year. Whereas if you're just, again, nothing against the smaller operator, but they may just have a certain quota they've got to get through of a certain product, they're going to try and move it regardless. Whereas the good thing with you guys is that you do have a lot of knowledge and choice.
We definitely have more choice than everybody else.
Yeah,
that definitely sets us aside. We should be able to find something that's going to suit every fish.
Yeah, so my point, they would have the experience in understanding what varieties to offer to their customers. And I don't think their customers shouldn't be too shy in asking them their opinion of what to use, because we can all be very opinionated if we're not careful and not be good listeners. But to listen to somebody like Mitchell's that are doing 1,000 tonne a week into the industry, they've got knowledge, and they should capitalise on that and take that on board. Whether they listen to it or not is another thing, or do it, but they should listen to them.
It's true that at least if you've got a conversation going, a rapport going, if they don't just think, oh, Stuart's trying to do me over, or David's, if they think like that, then they're never going to have a good relationship, are they?
I think individuals like that are few and far between, aren't they? I think that's I think the reason people deal with us or deal with another potato merchant is because they have trust in that individual to make sure that they can give them a consistent quality at the right price.
So we can't figure out what the best potato is at the moment, but what is a weakness with the current lineup of potatoes, and what could future developments do to eradicate that? Because blight and stuff like that isn't as big a deal as it used to be, is it? Like,
no, it's not. Richard will tell you more about this.
Well, the first thing I would like to say is on the eastern side of the country where we're growing our potatoes, we have a little bit more sunshine than most, okay? And we get short of water sometimes, but we supplement that with our spray irrigation, all right? So I tend to think that Cambridgeshire is one of the best areas to buy in for that perfect potato. Then the perfect potato then also has to have taste. So that's very important. Although Marquis does a very good fry, I wouldn't say it's the best tasting variety. So Stuart plugs the Ramos, but Agria is a very good tasting potato. But you normally have to pay a more of a premium for it.
Lower yields or just...
No, Agria can still yield considerably well, like Marquis. But I think it's important to keep monitoring any new varieties that come along. And there is one that comes to mind that we're fully exploring. It's called Babylon. Now that is a more yellow-fleshed potato, much like Agria. And the seed house is Agrico in Holland. And so that's commercially building up. So we have some in store this year. So through Mitchell Brothers, the customers can always try some.
Okay, and what would be better with these potatoes?
Yeah, so what's that? So apart from Agria, which I agree with Richard, it's a very good variety. Just some people don't like the colour.
Yes, that's right. That's more yellow than the normal
product though. Like
No, but when it fries, it's
a bit
slightly
more golden.
Yeah. So for example, the South Coast they like Agria down there, but in the Midlands.
So why are the potatoes from like Belgium and Holland and all this yellower? Because even when I've bought potato flake from over there, it's yellower than British potato flake.
It's just the varieties.
Oh, okay, just the varieties.
It's just the varieties, but but just going back to Babylon.
Yes.
So similar to Agria. Is Agria
Very, very similar to Agria. If you didn't know, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
right? Okay.
But it's because Agria came off license breeding wise, so a lot of these varieties are regulated,
Okay.
and only the company that bred them are the ones that can market them, so they're under license. And when Agria comes off license, that means anybody can breed the variety, but you have to be careful with that because the product. The seed wouldn't have the same vigour. So consequently, they're bringing in new varieties all the time. And this Babylon is a replacement for Agria. And I recommend that you try it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're compelled to do that now, Stuart.
Absolutely.
So is there like a certain potato that you love growing, like that has, it always takes to the British conditions and so on, or they're pretty much the same when they're in the ground?
Oh, no. Some have more drought resistance to them. Some would throw so many tubers. The mother tuber that you plant, if you talk about marquee, it might grow 18 daughter tubers. All right. Now you have to grow that plant to try and get that marketable size. Which you can do with nutrients, irrigation, and everything like that. And then Agria, the mother tuber, would only grow 4 daughter tubers. So you have to get the seed spacing correct, because if you give them too much space in their in the ridge, they would grow too big and they would become hollow heart.
So that's what that is.
So you manipulate your size to your seed spacing, your nutrients, and what if you can give them water or not.
You'd always see the hollow heart when you do like potato fritters.
Yeah, and sometimes if you grow without irrigation and you get sporadic growth, so let's say it's cold for a fortnight, and then all of a sudden it's ideal growing conditions day and night, they grow so quickly that you get growth cracks in them. And you get a tuber and it just opens up with the crack through the middle, and then they're all waste, dross.
Sorry, go
No, go on.
So, and secondary growth, because that creates mixed fry, which
Yes.
we get lots of comments from the customers saying, the farmers are mixing potatoes in the bags and they're putting 2 different fields in or varieties.
Yeah, it's not the case.
It's not the case.
No,
So
them days are gone.
No.
No, farmers,
yeah.
believe it or not, are trying to be very
Absolutely.
professional.
I agree with you.
And trying to please you all.
Yeah, 'cause
but it's a
we're
tough
demanding.
call.
We're demanding.
So
Yes.
what about when I've seen potatoes where they've got you cut them in half and you can almost see a ring and then there's more potato around it?
Yeah, that's secondary
That's
growth.
secondary.
So it's a glassy
Yeah,
potato,
that's
so it's
it.
Yes.
it's not as mature.
Okay.
Or they've got a tuber coming, so
Yes.
they look like Skittles, sort of bowling pins.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's due to distress then. So what happens if you get a heat wave, right, and the potato stops growing at 25 centigrade, and then it starts, and then it stops, that'll be so distressed that the alarm bells will ring within the plant, and that will want to multiply itself more to try and survive.
Okay.
So then the daughter tubers sprout new tubers, and it can be a chain of probably 4 tiny ones off the one daughter tuber. And of course, if they don't perish and die, and they keep growing, their dry matter could be as low as 16% when the product that you're wanting to put in the bag is 19 or 20, and then you've got your mixed fry, which is bad news.
Yeah. And there's no way of identifying it on the farm. So, because this potato still looks the same as the other one, yeah.
And when you're checking potatoes throughout the growing process, is it literally digging one up, checking it?
Oh yes.
Oh, it's literally.
Yeah, if you remember, I said we have 3 teams of 2 going out checking dry matters through the season. You'd have 2 teams going round regularly digging to check for those types of things. There is a product called Phaser, which is a growth prohibitor, which you can spray onto the crop, and that'll abort those tiny potatoes. Now, if the weather's right when we apply it, and the potato's still growing and taking that chemical in, that'll work well. Another time it doesn't work. But with all growers, you set out your stall to produce the perfect potato, is what we're talking about, but with the best will in the world, as they're grown in the soil, and we have different weather patterns all the time, you can't get the right product all the time. But you set your stall out to do that.
I've got two stupid questions. I'm going to sound stupid saying them out. So, most fruit and vegetables have seeds. You grow chilies from the seeds. How do they do this with potatoes? How are they reproducing potatoes? Again, I know this sounds really stupid.
So the eyes on the potato, they produce chits.
Okay, which is what you mentioned earlier. Yeah,
which produce the next tuber, basically. And so what the CIPC is doing, so the potatoes are lying dormant in store. Or what the mint oil is doing is it's stopping them sprouting and producing
to grow more potatoes.
Because they think they're in the soil because they're in a dark, cool place.
So then these Dutch people, the growers of the seed.
That's quite complex. They crossbreed.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So but they start with the actual leaf, don't they? Is that?
Yeah, they would do cuttings from your chitted plant there, and then grow mini tubers.
Okay,
and then they multiply up from mini tubers to the seed tubers that we know. Very complex job.
Yeah, because I've seen them before. They're like little golf balls, aren't they?
Well, it's basically a small potato. What they use
but I thought these were more round, like as in more like
because they haven't had a chance to develop.
Yeah,
but farmers actually the seed that the growers use in the UK, is certified, so it's either grown in Holland or Scotland.
But
it can be grown anywhere, but it's specifically being grown to be reproduced again.
But they're inedible, those potatoes.
No.
Oh.
They're edible, aren't they, Richard?
Oh yes, they're edible.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but they would store their seed potatoes at, remember, about 2.5 centigrade.
Yeah.
So if you went to fry them, they'd be black.
Yeah. Okay.
And they wouldn't be edible.
So what's the difference between them and a new potato? Is it just variety, or at that point is it smaller, even smaller? I guess.
No, because the new potato has grown past that point.
Oh, okay. So a new potato is the same potato.
No, a new potato is it's a variety that grows quickly.
Sorry. Just to clarify, I mean new potatoes that you see in the supermarket, not fish and chip shop new potatoes.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I mean the little salad potatoes and little.
Well, they're specifically grown. So if you were to grow, Maris pear is a variety you get in the supermarket. If we grow some in our kitchen garden at home, and if you don't get them in time, they'll grow up to the size of a normal potato.
Oh, okay.
But they won't be as. So they're grown specifically.
They're not fit for purpose.
Richard will tell you, but I think they either plant the plants closer together or further apart to get smaller.
Yes, Maris pear. I've always been brought up to believe they're like a canning potato because they're all tiny. So the mother tuber would throw many tubers. So as you didn't want size, you'd plant them close together to try and get the yield. Punnet potatoes and salad potatoes are all done in the same way. So when you're a grower, you're choosing your varieties and you're knowing your market and then you plant accordingly.
So much to consider, isn't there? Just so much. It's not just lobbing some spud seeds and off you go, is it?
Well, it's the type of storage as well. I mean, so this cold storage, how many tons is that going to hold? Just out of interest.
The store we put up recently stored 11,000 tonne, which would be probably one of the largest stores in the country.
It's a huge cold.
That is huge.
And what we're finding with the forced ventilation of the fans, we're already seeing that we don't have to apply so much sprout suppressant, the spearmint oil, because that's doing its job correctly. Yeah. Where some of the older stores are not performing as well.
There's a lot to consider, isn't there? It's not just.
And I think Richard's point was the level of investment required to grow potatoes at a high level is huge, and so this is what's having an effect on the industry. And if you take this year out and look at the prices of potatoes over the last 10 years, the trend is upwards, and the reason is because you have less and less growers. I think when I started in 2000, there were 10,000 growers of potatoes in the UK. I'm pretty sure it's under 2,000 now.
Yes, I think you could get us all in one hall now.
Yeah.
If you went to your Birmingham halls,
That'd be a big argument, wouldn't it? Be a bit like a Greek wedding.
I'd love to do a cartel.
But no, so again, these costs just aren't realised by the users. They don't realise that you've got these expensive.
They're buying a commodity, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
But the definition of this commodity hasn't caught up with the reality, which is that a lot of investment is going into making it a more consistent product, more unique product for the fish and chip industry. And I think it's not their fault they don't know this, because no one's ever told them before. And I think that the reality just hasn't. It's not their fault. I'm not saying it in a derogatory way, but if they don't know, how can they make these judgments? And in my mind, it sort of leans back to the argument that potatoes need a more consistent price as opposed to that peaks and troughs throughout that cycle that it goes through.
I think that's already there in the market. I think with the fixed price contracts, not just us that does it, loads of people do it now. And so if that's the direction the end user wants to go down, that's what they've done.
Yeah.
And they pretty much, a few people jump in and out, but they either do contracts or they don't. And the ones that like to trade potatoes and see what the price goes, see what it does each year, that's their decision.
Yeah.
I think they probably want perhaps they might say the freedom of being able to choose. But the reality is they probably stick with the same supplier anyway.
For the most part.
But I think actually I'm not going to go into it, don't worry.
Oh.
No, I was just saying, I think if you actually look back, Richard is right. The contract price is below. Take this year out, the contract price is definitely, I know it is, it's definitely below the market price through the season over the last 10 years.
So customers win in that respect.
They've won massively. Yeah. Even with this year in there, they've still won.
Yeah.
They're still ahead of the market price.
So in your minds, while we both got you here, what we're talking, to make this work, obviously I'm not going to change anything here, but what we're talking, another £1 in the process, would that give you guys a lot more? Is it more than that? I don't
think we should get carried away.
No, I'm just trying to think from if let's say potato prices went up a little bit,
No, I think.
What do you think is fair to the end user to say? Look, mate.
I think I've already said that. I think. As an average, it needs to be £8 to £9 in season. Richard will probably disagree and say so it needs to be 9 to 10.
Of course he would. Yeah.
Yeah, because storage per tonne is costing us at the moment about £30 a tonne.
Okay.
So if you start off at the season at £150 a tonne in October, I'd have to talk tonnes.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I would expect that to need to be £300 a tonne in May and June.
Oh, you just said it was £30 a tonne to store them.
Yes.
Per month, or just through the season.
No, through the season is £30.
Okay.
Then you've got your 8 applications of spearmint oil at £4.20 a tonne.
Yeah. Okay. So that's 62. Then you've got dehydration as well.
Yes. Weight loss. We haven't spoken about that.
Yeah. I didn't even think that was a thing.
No, well,
it makes sense though. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So if you was to pull 1,000 tonne out of the field, what would that relate to once it's?
You'd lose about 7% weight loss to market in May and June.
In May and June.
Yeah.
Okay. So
pretty significant to be fair.
So 70 tonne, from 1,000. That's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is if you're talking about my figure of £300 a tonne.
No, well, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get back there.
Yeah.
Still haven't got there. But.
There's a little bit of ambiguity built in. So how long does it take to grow the potato from the minute it's in until the minute you lift it?
Well, we look to plant where we are in the month of April.
Yeah.
We're a little bit delayed in planting because if you remember I said we were just below sea level, so we have to worry about the May frosts.
Yeah.
So if you was to plant in March and your potatoes were up full row in May and you got the May frost, it cut them right back to ground level, and then you would lose the vigour, and that would impede on your crop. So we would look to plant in April, and it would take us 5 weeks to plant the crop, and then we start burning off, killing the crop, the end of September.
Okay.
And of course, we keep losing chemistry. And what we've also lost is the burning off chemicals to kill the crop. So we're very limited to what we can use. Once upon a time, we used to use acid.
Okay.
And we could burn off the crop, which then sets the skin, and that would take a fortnight. Now we're taking 3 weeks and longer to actually set the skin on the crop to be able to store.
So when you say burn the crop, you just mean you spray it?
You're killing the plant.
Yeah,
Killing the horn.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it's not setting fire to it. Does this come from an old terminology? Is that what I'm getting at? The
Yeah.
burning?
Oh yes. Yes.
So maybe back in the day,
it's not literally burn it.
But
No.
back in the day, I guess you would have maybe or not.
No, that's just a terminology
just
us
terminology.
farmers use, that we burn the
So
crop
you're just
off. It's
killing
just
the plant, basically.
killing the horn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if you didn't kill the horn, it'd keep growing until you got your first frosts. You see, and you'd have immaturity in the plant, in the tubers. And the skin has to be set on the tubers for us to be able to harvest it, put it over our grading lines, into boxes, into store.
How much softer would it be?
Well, if it's you like new potatoes.
Oh,
like
okay. So
flaky
I'll be like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Okay.
if that were the case, it's like cutting an apple. As soon as
Yeah.
you cut it, it's going to oxidise, isn't it? And so
Yeah,
they wouldn't store
They'd
basically.
be
No,
pretty-
that's right.
Pretty susceptible.
That's why
Yeah.
new potatoes, when the shops are on fresh in the summer, they're literally in less than 24 hours. They're out in the field and into the back of the shop with us. They're literally we collect them at lunchtime on the Monday, and they're being delivered into shops Tuesday morning.
Wow.
So and then you may only have 4 or 5 days shelf life on them.
Yeah. And the smaller bags and so on, aren't they?
Well, yeah, no, that's it. Yeah. So,
I think with the early crop, the fryers should be very hand to mouth, because they're so immature. New potatoes, they don't store long, don't have very long shelf life. Where potatoes you're buying today
keep for weeks.
have a long shelf life.
Why? We touched on this earlier. We were setting up. Why do you think like Spanish potatoes, but they're Cara Spanish, Belgian? I don't know what they are. Mostly, probably Agria, maybe to some degree. or
No,
not?
I think so. Belgium is really a cheap alternative to Cambridgeshire potatoes.
Oh, is it really?
So the ones you're thinking about are Cypriot and Mallorcan and Spanish ones that come in probably early June in reality, and go through to the middle of July. Now, so what's happened there is their season has just started earlier. So it's the equivalent of September or late August in the UK. So when the potatoes have got more work in them, because they've dehydrated, when the fry colours are going off and the new ones aren't ready, people turn to these Spanish ones, which are in their prime, really.
Yeah, because they're at the
August,
early
September,
ones,
so they're at their prime, and that's why people buy them.
So they're not better. It's just the timing.
Well, they're better at the time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. At the time.
Yeah.
So does it ever work that we send potatoes there when they've got earlies?
Well, we are selling some potatoes now to Spain.
Yeah.
We're exporting to Spain a few to the Canary Islands, which, by the way, take 3 weeks to get there in a vessel. And then, of course, the Northern and Southern Ireland. But going back to your Spanish coming in and Cypriot, do they have to be washed, Stuart? Or
The Spanish ones do, yeah. There's some kind of beetle which is not allowed into the UK, so they have to be treated before they come.
Oh, really?
Come in, so that does affect their shelf life. But this came in about 3 years ago, I think.
yes,
And
I thought it did.
and the reality is, there's been, and Richard's one of the growers who've managed to. They're managing to hold spuds for longer in store here now, anyway. So I think there's less demand for Spanish and Cypriot potatoes at present. And there's obviously a price difference as well. So let's say UK spuds are, let's say they're £10 a bag in June. Spanish will probably be 14 or 15 for 20 kilos. Now, if the grower's done a good job in the UK, you're going to get a better yield still from the 25 kilo ones, and the product's not going to be far off. The percentage of shops that use Spanish potatoes is very, very small. I would say 5%.
Yeah. I don't hear about it as much as I used to, put it that way.
No, well, that's because farming methods have improved, storage methods improved.
But we're back to my point, Stuart, about how well the spearmint will do in controlling potatoes. Well, because CIPC, we was going well into July with our crop.
So how do you think that'll affect the market then? Do you think there'll be demand on the early UK crop?
Yes, I would have thought so. Yes. But like I say, we're in uncharted waters. How well potatoes are going to keep this year? So what's in the June market?
So Richard normally grows for the June and July market.
Yes, we do. Yes.
And so the plan is, are you clear by May?
Well, we like I say, we're in uncharted waters. We don't know how well they'll be, but I just think the people that can master it and get good potatoes till June
will have higher values.
Will have higher values.
So again, the people that do, and again, I don't want to be derogatory to general farmers, but the people that do this just to sort of top up their land, they're going to struggle at this, and this is where you guys.
They're out of the game.
Are they already out of the game, or will they be by then?
No, at that point in the season, ordinarily
they're out of the game.
Ordinarily, they're out. They've finished, and they probably try and be clear by the end of March, or certainly the end of April.
Yeah, those type of farmers, Stelios, wouldn't necessarily have these large stores of high quality. They would have set their stall out to be done marketing by February, March, because it's going back to whether you store in boxes or whether you store in bulk. Because when you store in bulk, after February, you get what we call compression damage, where they'll be, due to the weight of volume in the stores, you can imagine if potatoes are stacked 13 foot high, the little potato at the bottom of the stack, he gets compressed. Yeah. And what that'll mean, when they go in the rumbler, you'll see your black marks come. And they'll think it's damage, but it's compression damage, you see. So the farmer with his bulk store would plan to sell his gear before February, and then the people that have invested in the big mega stores in boxes would plan to serve the market the last quarter. So each farmer's different.
So the ones who have invested are expecting higher values at the end.
And it's not unreasonable.
No, of course not. It's not like they've grown for that, and it's like the early growers who take a chance and they plant their crops really early, with frost being a really big issue. But they're doing it in order to have potatoes ready for the last week in June, or the second last week in June, where they're going to get their highest values. But they are taking a chance because they run the risk of having some heavy frosts in May, which is going to cut back their crop. And so they're going to have smaller yields. Yeah.
And do we see any other issues with Brexit? Have we covered everything there? Do you think is any other because
I think it might be in the UK. It depends how strong the pound goes. But if the pound sort of hangs around 115, 120, it's probably in the UK growers' favour. Yeah. I think just the thought of having to do the paperwork.
Yeah, that's a different headache.
It means that companies like Mitchell's might not think, okay, well, I can buy for a little bit less in Europe, but by the time all the overheads and the hassle factors come in, I perhaps don't want to do that, which means you're obviously shortening supply. I don't know. Richard exports to Ireland, so he's obviously exporting to the European Union. How's that?
Yes, and we thought we'd be able to export to Northern Ireland, being part of the UK, no problem, but we are having to get plant health out to inspect the potatoes, the consignment, and then they issue us with a phytosanitary certificate, which allows us to export. And that has to be in Southern Ireland on a heat-treated pallet, so there's no beetles, bugs and things. and in Northern Ireland we're okay with a standard pallet. But it takes time to get DEFRA out. They're telling me 7 working days, and I'm suggesting they do it within 4, because we all want to do things with speed these days, don't we?
We've sent some stock over to Northern Ireland recently, and I spent all of Monday just setting up like all the EORI numbers, and I had mine, but the guy on the other end didn't have his, so it was just like everything was just a bit of a mess. I thought, let's go to Northern Ireland though, and I guess it's all there just in case it does cross the border. I guess, isn't it? It's not because of Northern Ireland, but it's just
so DEFRA, which is the government agricultural agency, are they inspecting every load that goes over there?
Yes.
every load.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, they will do a block if it's the same sample, but they'll only do a maximum of 4 loads of the same sample.
But they'll sample that before you packaged it. Obviously, you don't want to.
No, we package it.
They have to wait here for 7 days.
They wanted 7 days notice, but from ourselves, we're giving them 4, and they're able to accommodate us.
And demand in Ireland, they're not in lockdown, are they, or are they?
Yes, they are. That's I would just say it's steady demand from all sectors we're finding, and that's why the values seem to be stagnant at the moment. And I think I said earlier, I don't see any change for at least another month. Is my opinion.
I know Northern Ireland does a lot of prepared chips. I know a lot of my customers over there, like Belfast, Lisbon, all that, they buy them in ready. Yeah,
but they'll be, I should imagine, they'll be UK spuds.
Probably,
Cambridgeshire spuds.
Yes, Ireland buys a lot of potatoes from the east side of the country.
Okay.
Because in Ireland they have a very, very high rainfall. So when I said to you, if you stress the potato, the starch turns to sugar. Well, in their case, that's the high rainfall that does it.
I see.
So, because Ireland eat more potatoes per head of population than any other country in Europe, they love their potatoes. And it seems ironic that we export them from the eastern side of the country to Ireland.
Yeah.
But, without a doubt, our potatoes are superior to what they grow themselves.
Does McDonald's get theirs grown in Ireland?
No, McDonald's are...
Over here as well?
They wherever their factories are, they're ordinarily grown. So there's factories in the UK and
Scarborough, McCain's is in Scarborough.
I don't know. They have factories in Ireland. I don't think they will.
No, I don't think they do, Stuart.
So that potatoes never took off over, is it? Like the russet Burbank and those sort of russet, the long ones. They never really made it over here, considering we do chipping, which is...
But McDonald's use
russet,
Burbank.
That's right, yeah. But that's never made it over here, has it really?
Well, it works for the French fry, but I don't know why it's never really taken.
Well, they've always told me Russell Burbank, it grows, the tuber is a little bit more rectangular.
Yeah.
Can you believe it or not? I don't know, but I think that's the case. So there's less wastage with that variety.
Yeah,
going through their production line.
Yes, when the scoop in McDonald's putting chips in the box.
With the length.
Yes,
it's all geared around.
And all things like that.
Yeah,
that's what they tell me.
I was told that those potatoes are pretty susceptible to all sorts of damage. They need a lot of treatment, apparently. Those russet Burbanks.
Yeah, but if you think about the portion size in comparison,
it makes up for it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
and scale and volumes and you name it.
See, talking to McCain's only the other day, they said they was only about 3% down on volume to what they were pre-COVID.
I imagine, and
so.
Because it's been taken up by the home market, hasn't it?
Yes.
And I imagine the home market, so supermarkets, I imagine their sales are probably slightly up.
Yes,
so
they are.
It's not all doom and gloom, is it?
Yeah, because last March when COVID hit us, I had to find new markets because the fish and chip shops were closed or open, closed, whatever. And we sold then to the Crispers, Mackey's in Scotland, so we was hauling from Cambridgeshire to Scotland there, and then we sold a lot to all the supermarkets. But I felt as though we was fully exploited because their trade in the supermarket was very, very busy, and their prices didn't reflect what they was paying us farmers. So it was a bitter pill to swallow. The fact that I felt we was being exploited.
Well, they knew where they had.
Well, it's back to supply and demand.
Of course it is,
Because if there's a shortage, trust me, I'll become a very hard seller.
Yeah.
I'm just a walkover at the moment.
It's quite unpleasant.
Well,
I need a new Range Rover, Stuart.
but I guess once the tables are turned, it's just the other way around. It's just
Yes, yeah, but we like we said earlier, there is some common ground, and contract prices can reflect that common ground.
Yeah.
But I don't think the fryer should expect to see these cheap potatoes, because the banks won't allow the farmers to invest to carry on growing, and you don't want an exodus of growers, because your potatoes will become too dear.
Yeah.
So the key is to find that common ground.
Yeah, I had just as an example, talking about buying better potatoes. It's just that I had a friend of mine, and he was I can't remember. I don't want to say what potato merchant it was, but it wasn't you anyway. He's far away from
Probably not a very good one.
Yeah, and he was just buying, the cheapest ones he had, like just whatever. Well, that was all he had really. Just those potatoes. And he noticed they took a little bit more work. They didn't taste as good, and then moves over to another merchant down where he is, and I think they're about £1.50, £1.80 more a bag. Straight away, they were peeling better. They was done a lot faster. They tasted better, and he said, slowly, the sales just went up. And I think that, for me, is an exercise in itself,
It's to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you sell the best product, your customer is going to come back and keep spending money with you. And I think most fish fryers know that.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Like everybody, some people are cynical about everything, and they are anyway. I get people that say to me, I'm not buying a batter mix, I'll just buy flour. Okay, go for it. And I'm not going to do anything about it. But we're trying to put a lot of emphasis in doing better, having better chips, because we do see the fallback when people use bad chips. We see it because when you filter your oils and you've been frying not so great chips, you get a lot of sugar content coming through the oil, which then makes the batter glisten a lot. It looks very like a mahogany look. Then they come to us and say, there's a problem with the batter, and you have to actually show them. Actually,
then you just blame the potatoes.
Never yours.
Poor old farmer.
Yeah.
Well, I don't pass it down the line.
Yeah, everyone passes it down the line. But no, technically, because you're moving oils around the filtration system, it doesn't take sugar out oil. It's not that good. So your oils do glisten a little bit, and you don't have great stability, which is why I'm not a huge fan of moving oil around. I like filtering, but I like keeping oil in one compartment and not spreading the damage, if you get what I mean. Yeah. Especially when it's new potatoes. So a lot of range manufacturers would say move chip oil to fish pans, and then other range manufacturers or other people would just say move fish oil to chip pans. But I just say no, keep every frying pot on its own, filter it, keep it independent, top it up independently, because then you're not moving around any damage.
Okay, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's my theory. And so one of the last topics I wanted to talk about is GM crops and gene editing. What's the future hold? Because I think at the moment there's a lot of talk about this happening now. Now we're out of the European Union. You're the farmer. You tell us, Richard. What should we expect?
Well, I think a thing to watch out for is the gene editing.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll be more acceptable to the general public rather than GM. There's been too much bad press with GM, genetically modified Frankenstein foods, and all these things. And sadly, we've never been able to experiment with it, to trial it in full. But gene editing, Boris has said that he will accept it, and so I think we should expect big things from that. And what I would expect to see from that would be if they could come out with a variety of potato, say that we didn't have to spray for blight, because to keep blight at bay, we would probably have to travel through the crop 12 times maybe. So the less agrochemicals we can put on that crop, the better I think it will be. Because we don't want that. I don't think we can feed the nation with organic, but we can certainly play our part in that with gene editing.
Yeah.
And doing things like
so
that.
So it would be a safer product then?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because in the best will in the world, all these agrochemicals can't do no good at the end of the day. And I'd think that the less we agrochemicals we use, the better for us it'll be.
Yeah.
And another thing with breeding, that we have to use nematicides sometimes on our fields. And what that means is that controls, we call it an eelworm, that's a cyst that attacks the root of the growing plant. And that can devastate your crop. It can cut the yield by half. Wow. So consequently, we put these nematicides on. Well, I think with gene editing, they can take a gene out of a wild plant, introduce it to a new variety, and therefore it would cope with cyst nematodes, so we wouldn't have to put this nematicide on. Things like that. And if we could grow a potato where the dormancy would take longer, we could then store it in our crops and not apply so much spearmint oil or whatever we're likely to be using in the future.
What other fruit and vegetables could last a year, would you say, in storage? Or was that a bit too long? 6 months, let's say, after being picked?
What, potatoes?
No, like aside from potatoes, is there any other vegetable that they could cross-link it with? Like,
yes, I wouldn't know, what they can cross with and what they can't.
It's just interesting if you can do all this without the need of chemicals, like you say, like just makes it a cleaner product. So I think people don't realise. I always think about this with vegans, like they don't realise how much agrochemical actually goes into vegetables because the bugs and nature just want to.
Well, we have to spray the crop for aphids because an aphid will fly in. And that will feed on the foliage of the plant, and then it will spread virus into the plant. So then the plant doesn't produce as right yield.
Is that what you use? I don't know if you still use it over here, but nicotinoids.
Yes. Well, there's been a lot took out of our basket these days. Yeah. So they're changing. They bring new ones in, but they're never as good as the ones that have been banned. Yeah. But they've been banned for good reason, and we have to work around it. But the pressure's on for the farmer to grow his good crop of potatoes. Yeah. But if gene editing can help with the aphicide, the nematicide, the dormancy, and the not having to spray for blight, that would be a big thing for us all.
So when did they say they're going to start this, or is it now?
They'd be working with gene editing now.
So what, next 10, 15 years, we're going to see some...
I would have thought we'd see things coming up within a decade, which would mean something to us.
So that would be a cheaper production.
I don't know, we're back to that inflation again, aren't we? You must remember our tractors we buy, they increase every 12 months.
Well, Richard's right there. For example... Sorry to jump on the bandwagon here, but obviously staff's wages, minimum wage is going up, so all staff wages going up. New vehicles, our vehicles.
Yeah, your HGVs.
They need replacing.
Yeah.
They've gone up.
That is true. Inflation's a thing, isn't it?
And the other problem is, and this is something the shop won't see, but they've seen it in all their dry goods and possibly fish as well, because they're not as busy. They're buying less units, but the people who are supplying them are working on units per vehicle to make their profit. So they're having to increase the cost of that unit
to make up for it.
So the sooner that
I think fish is okay. I think a lot of chip shops are quite happy with fish prices.
Fish is okay. Yeah, well, that's been Brexit.
Again, and for how long? How long? Once again, volumes start to creep back up again, and demand's there.
Yes.
It's always going to be supply and demand, isn't it? Whatever you
Absolutely.
say. So,
but the old adage of saying cheap as chips, we've got to stop saying that because chips are no longer cheap, are they? They're reasonable, but they're not cheap.
I think definitely reasonable.
But it's still a well-priced meal, isn't it?
I think
in comparison
so.
To what, a Chinese takeaway or an Indian takeaway. I think lunchtimes is where they've lost ground. They've lost ground to Greggs and Starbucks.
Yeah, but then you're not going to compete with 99p sausage roll and a 99p sandwich, and it's the speed factor as well. I think.
And it's perception of being a healthy.
Yeah,
lunch.
it has that perception.
It's very much falling into a dinner
Yeah, and maybe we're
supper
gonna see a lot of fish and chip shops that don't open at lunchtimes after this. I don't know.
No,
Maybe,
I think.
But I
I hope not.
yeah, no, I get that, and I think maybe they'll open like. I think they're going to see condensed hours more so.
I think it's going to go the other way. I think as soon as we get back to normal,
They're going to open more.
Well, they're going to have more competition, aren't they?
True.
So they're going to have to go back. I think
Be a bit more competitive.
They are going to have to be a bit more competitive, and they're probably going to have to open an hour later. And again, because as people are moving around again and seeing people, they're going to things will revert back to to in
normality.
my opinion, to normality.
Yeah,
maybe.
No, it's true. Like, I think we've just got to be careful as an industry. Whether and I always say this to fish and chip shops: just be careful not to outprice yourselves, like because it's one thing that really worries me. Like,
I agree with that.
because
I do agree with that.
me and a friend were talking about this. And we were saying, like, for argument's sake, if fish and chip shops always been like, it's just been the thing you did. Like, I'm on the way home, should I get chipper tea? That is it. You didn't give it too much thought. You almost know what your missus wants. You know what your kids are having. You're not giving it a lot of thought. But if all of a sudden it's £15 a head, for argument's sake, or even £13 a head, it's being delivered, it can be, and I see a lot of people in our industry saying, "Oh, just charge for it. If you've got to charge for it, charge for it." And I feel like, well, no, because now I'm thinking, "Oh, should I have a nice burger from like Five Guys, or shall I have a Chinese or an Indian?" And you start to outprice yourself. And we are the working man's meal, and I really truly believe that. And woman, we are the, it's working class, and it's a great meal, but we've got to be careful not to.
I think it's a meal for everyone, actually.
Yeah. Like Coca-Cola, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone wants it. Everyone can afford it. Like, and I think because it's true, that's the only thing. Like, if you think, I'm poor, you two are both billionaires. We all like Coca-Cola. Everyone can afford it, and I think it's one of those things. Isn't
He's
it?
the only billionaire.
I wish. I wish.
I think fish and chips. I think it just spans everybody's. So if you get a bit silly with it and you start going more expensive, then you've got to be careful.
No, look, I've actually always been a keen advocate of putting the price up. However, I think we might be reaching a ceiling.
Yeah, have we hit the ceiling?
Yeah, I've always encouraged shops to put their prices up, especially when potatoes are expensive. But I think, we're perhaps getting to a ceiling now where we've got to be a bit careful.
Yeah, well, and also, I think what we do see, and I understand where the sentiment of increase your prices comes from, and that's because for the most part, portions are quite steep as well. So, I still know quite a few places where they're doing a 14-ounce fish and a 20-ounce bag of chips, and I think, I don't know how to convert that in grams right now off the top of my head, but it's a hefty portion.
It's a meal for 3 people.
It's a meal for 3 people. It's exactly that. And, and I see some reviews every now and then, they're like, it came to your chip, it was great, it fed 3 of us. And I'm like, whoa, and that wasn't expensive either.
No, I think that's where the multiples will get ahead of them, because it's a meal per person, isn't it? But it's easy to do that when you're going to have a burger and a portion of fries.
Well, a friend of mine always says, we've got, in our industry, fish and chip industry, he always says we've got it wrong the way we name our products. He said you should say cone of chips, and next to it should say something like for the elderly or light meal, and then regular person, large, hungry person. Okay. And he said if you name it like that, then, but what we've got now is sort of like cone is for kids, regular is for normal, large is for like 9 of us. So it's like, so I don't know, there is an issue, and I guess portion control sort of affects you guys in some way, because if we say, hey, put less chips out there, that comes all the way back down, doesn't it? So,
well, I think there's a great future for the fish and chip shop as long as he is selling a quality product. If he buys good quality potatoes to get that good chip, those customers will keep coming back. Yeah. And I think that's the key. Not to buy the poorer quality. Yeah, because I know that they might believe they're going to have a bigger profit margin, but in the long run, they do not.
Well, I've always said in my business, there's 2 prices. There's the price and then there's the cost of use. Yeah. And there's a big difference because, for example, if I buy the better potatoes from you guys, the cost of use is cheaper. And everyone might say, well, that don't make sense because they were dearer. But it does make sense. But
it's not just the cost of use, though. It's what every business needs, is repeat business.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
And so product. And the best,
One question for you, Stuart, on the chip shops. Years ago, they always spoke to us about that they might have a problem in washing their wastewater away with their peelings. How does that work these days? Do they
Nothing.
get regulated on it,
No.
and they're concerned about it?
There's been a concern, but there's been a concern since I've been in the industry, but
Yes.
Nothing. I just don't think it's a big enough issue to come to the fore. So
Okay.
if it were, then we'd all have to go into pre-packed chips, wouldn't we?
I'm not being. Sorry to interrupt. I think the biggest issue, just thinking about this, is fatbergs. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Like, where people either on accident, a little bit of oil goes down the sink and it starts to collect.
That's it, and
That's
baby wipes
yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I don't think 10,000 fish and chip shops.
Starch, isn't it?
Is a
Starch.
problem?
Well, I just don't think it's enough of a problem.
No.
I always like to think about the amount of after washing up at a fish and chip shop, a fairy liquid.
Don't
and
start
stuff
processing chips if that's what
No.
I tried that once. Nightmare.
No, but what we have done this year, and whether we'll end up using it or not, in our washing barrel washers on the farm, we've put soft brushes in just to be able to rinse the potatoes and take any soil off. And why we put the soft brushes in as well? Because can you remember I said up to 8 applications of spearmint may be needed to take us through till June, July. And if that smell was too strong, I would suggest we'd put it through our soft brushes just to take that smell away. Because remember, supermarkets have been using the product for years, and the one thing they do is wash their potatoes.
So would it be a washed potato or a brushed?
It would be a pre-washed.
Pre-washed.
It wouldn't go over
So the shop would get more yield. If there's
Yes,
soil.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I wonder what the shelf life would be, Stuart, if we did
Well, I think
wash the product.
if you were going through, depends on who your supply chain is. If you're going through a merchant that gets through volume quickly,
Yes.
then I don't think that would be a concern. I think you'd have 14 days, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Some of the smaller merchants, they're going to buy a load from you.
Yes.
They're going to put it in their warehouse, and it could sit there for up to 3 or 4 weeks.
Yes, could.
So,
Quite easily.
But I think with the bigger merchants, fortnight would be max. Reality would probably
Would they
be
need like
2 or 3 days.
Would they need like a wax spray or anything?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't think. I think no. So, for example, we supply Booker and Macro. They have a washed chipping potato from us, and that has a 14-day shelf life.
Okay.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's fine. With
Yeah.
that shelf
So
life.
just back to that question, I just don't think. I think starch is spoken about, but it's just not an issue. I don't think, and I think enough water and detergents go down that sink afterwards, and the drainage to move it. I think fat is the biggest problem.
And
Yes.
that's coming from the domestic.
Yeah.
origin.
Well,
I presume fish and chip shops dispose of their fat.
I don't know. I just rolled my eyes, but yeah, I hear stories where it isn't
Well,
disposed
you're
of.
going to have it occasionally.
But then also you've got the trickle effect. If you think you've got, I don't know, let's say 100,000 food businesses, even if, I don't know, let's say a kilo of fat or oil goes down there a week out of all of those, that's a lot. And I think when you see these fatbergs, they're pretty big.
Yeah, but I think that's someone tipping the oil out of their frying pan.
Yeah, it happens.
That's where it's coming from, but it's not just one household doing it, it's
No.
the whole town,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because
Yes.
it's a lot easier than
What-
tipping it into a container.
A very,
Yes.
a very quick one to finish on. Why don't we have netting bags over here? We have like paper bags. Why? Just
Well, it's less dust.
oh, okay.
If it's a wash product, I guess
Bit more protection,
you
maybe?
could have nets, but the appearance in the supermarkets is polythene. It looks better, or whatever.
No, I meant for
Plastic
bulk.
is. For what? For fish and chip shops?
Wholesale bulk. Yeah.
Imagine all the dust you'd have.
Yeah, so
in the
dust and
process.
mess. Yeah.
And I think
And
the
the lights
potato.
as well. They go green.
Yeah, the light would send the potatoes green, which
right.
is not good.
Okay, so I didn't realise why. I just was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know abroad you see like.
Yeah, on the
yeah.
continent they don't seem to worry, do they?
No.
No.
They eat anything, don't they? Not as fussy as Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Well, look, on that note, guys, have we forgot anything? Have we not discussed anything?
No, really happy with that.
Well, I'd just like to say, when I come back in my new life, I'm not coming back as the farmer. I don't know whether I want Stuart's job neither. I think I'll go for yours, Stelios.
It's funny you should say that, because as we've been talking, I've been thinking I want to be one of you too. See, everybody wants what's greener elsewhere.
Yes, that's right.
All right, chaps. Well, thank you for today.
Lovely.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thanks.